Today we're going to talk about classification and phylogeny. So let's get into it. I'm sure you heard of like kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Hopefully you heard about before. Okay, that's called taxonomy, where we can basically continually put organisms into groupings, and those groupings have similar things. Okay, and basically down here, these groupings are the biggest. Like here are the bacteria, here are the eukaryotes, okay? And then even with eukaryotes, like here are the animals, right? There could be here are the plants, but this one's just looking at animals. Up now from inside the animals, here are the ones with spinal cords. Okay, now from inside that, here are the mammals. Okay, here are the carnivores. Here are the cats, right? So with each level, we're getting more and more specific as we go up, and we're getting more and more general as we go down. Every single organism has a scientific name, and that name is based off of the genus and the species. So, for example, right here, the panther's name is Panthera pardus, and every single species has a different name. So, genus, species. Okay. So that's how they are named. So let's look at the Panthera genus. What do you think? Does it make sense these animals be grouped together? You're probably going like, yeah. Okay, but are these all of the cats? No. So why are these ones in particular put together? What do you think they were using to put these ones together and not some other cats in here? I'm not expecting you to know this, but as it turns out, they use the ability to roar. Okay, and so actually, originally, this was just these four, not the snow leopard, because all of these guys can roar. But then later, snow leopard was included. It can't roar, but when they examined the skulls of all these things, it has very similar cranial features, so they added it in. Okay, so obviously those are not all of the cats on the planet. There are in other genuses, but they are all in the same Felidae family. So here you go. Here are all the cats, right? And so here is the leopard genus. Here's the Prionolarius genus, Neophilis, right? Puma genus, Panthera. We just talked about the panthers, right? Lynx. So these are all of the cats, and then we can break them down into smaller groupings by genus. Beyond that, okay, we can classify and organize any living thing using this. Plants, animals, bacteria, prokaryotes, eukaryotes, doesn't matter. And that's great and all, but usually what we find is that looking at how things are related are actually a lot more telling and a lot more helpful than just, memorizing this for every single animal. Okay, so the way that we can look at what things are related is kind of like drawing a little bit of a family tree almost, but it's more of like an evolutionary family tree. And so this is called a phylogenetic tree. And so it's a diagram that shows basically the evolution of a group of organisms. And so here's a tree showing some of the members of the carnivora order. Okay, so some of the carnivores. Obviously, there are more carnivores than just these five. Okay, but here's carnivore splits to the cats. Obviously, there are more cats than just this, right? Here it splits over to the dogs, right? Obviously, there are more than just these two dogs, but again, just showing you how this could possibly look as far as a kind of branching diagram to show that cats and dogs are related because they are both carnivores. Like that's what they share in common. So when we're reading these things, wherever we have a thing right here like a split, this is called a node or a branch point, and this represents the most common ancestor of these two things. Okay, these are called sister groups. This one that's over here by itself is called the outgroup. An important thing to know is that this C could be going off by itself over here too. It doesn't matter. Also, B and A could be flippy-floppy. There's no rhyme or reason which one would go in B and which one would go in A. Okay, right here, here's another node or another branch point, and this would represent the common ancestor of A, B, and C. Okay, so let's take a look at one that has humans on it. So what do you think? Did we evolve from chimps? No, we did not. Okay, right here, this heart, this shows that we and chimps had a common ancestor, but then we split. How did splitting happen? Speciation, right? So probably populations got isolated some way, and we developed into two totally different things. But one of those things was a chimpanzee, one of the things was a human, but we didn't come from chimps. We just had a common ancestor. Same thing with gorillas. We did not descend from gorillas, but right here, we had a common ancestor with gorillas. And right here is our common ancestor with orangutans. Okay, So out of this whole thing, what are we the least related to? That would be gibbons, because they're all the way over here, right? We have to keep going further and further back in time to find the most common ancestor of humans and gibbons. Okay. So you can draw them side to side, you can draw them up and down, you can draw them kind of like with these little goalposts, or you can draw them with lines like this. These three show the exact same info, just like rotated or drawn slightly differently. So you can do it either way, it doesn't matter. And don't forget that this A and B could flippy floppy, this C and D could flippy floppy, this E could stay where it is, or this E could shoot up and go over here. It doesn't matter, it's all showing the same thing, that this is an outgroup. Okay, so let's look at it. Which is most closely related? Caddisflies and moths or butterflies, and fleas and scorpions. Well, caddisflies and moths and butterflies have an ancestor here, okay? Fleas and scorpions have an ancestor here. They're both equally related, according to this, right? We go about the same amount back in time. They both have a common ancestor. So they're both, fleas and scorpions are just as related as caddisflies and moths. What's the outgroup? That's going to be the flies, because they're over here by themselves. So we can not necessarily learn like when a species evolved. We're going to get into that. That it's not like one came from another. It doesn't necessarily show us individual, like in between organisms, right? So the way that we make these trees is based off of physical traits, based off of fossils, based off of embryos, and based off of DNA, RNA, and protein similarities. There's a reason why we don't just use features, and that's that features can be deceiving. Wolves and coyotes look very, very similar, but they're a lot more distantly related than you would probably guess based off of just looking at them through like analyzing their DNA. Same thing here. We've got two different types of moles, but they both evolved independently because they were in similar environments. If you were to look at these guys, you would put them probably on the same branch of a tree, but they're actually going to be way further apart than that. Look at these guys. These are not two snakes, okay? One is a snake, one is a glass lizard, okay? So this is a lizard because it has an ear, an eyelid, and like this lateral groove thing. Kind of crazy, huh? So that's why we need to use more than just that. So we can sometimes label them to show when different traits evolved, okay? So here's where jaws came about, okay? Here's where lungs, everything after this has lungs, everything after this has claws, everything after this has feathers, everything after this has fur, mammary glands, right? So what's the only animal without jaws? A hagfish, because everything this way, everything after this dash has jaws. Which animals are most distantly related? That's going to be the hagfish and the chimp. And which animal evolved longest ago? It's going to be the hagfish. Most trees don't show time on them, but some do, right? This one has millions of years ago. So we could look and we could kind of go back and see, oh, okay, this must have happened 500 million years ago type of thing. But a lot of them don't have that, but they can be labeled. But usually we can just tell by relative length of branches that this is the most recent common ancestor, this is further back in time, this is further back in time, and so on and so on, and this is the farthest back in time. So we can use it to show relative lengths. You might hear the word cladogram. You can use them interchangeably. So you might hear me say phylogenetic tree. You might hear me say cladogram. You might see different things in different handouts. But for all intents and purposes, they are synonyms. This is what we went through. You're going to be working through this in class. You're going to be doing lots of practice diagrams. And usually phylogenetic trees show up in the AP exam some way, somehow, either multiple choice or essay. So it's definitely going to be a thing that we're going to focus on and learn about so that you hopefully can master it and nail it on the test. And here's where we are in the textbook.